Thank you very much. I'm very honored to deliver this talk within the Masterclass in this Diversities project. And I will continue from where Yuri finished very nicely about these institutional arrangements and growing inequalities. And my talk will focus more on the issue of the spatial dimension of the socio-economic inequalities. And my talk is based on a book project that has been run in parallel to the DIVERCITIES project, and that is also approaching to an end right now. In August this year, a book will be out on comparative research on socio-economic segregation in 13 European capital cities. So the book takes up the topic of the spatial dimension, and we measure socio-economic segregation based on income or based on occupation, given the country and the data availability. So the motivation why we started this book project was very simple. As you said, income inequalities have increased globally, not only in Europe. But there is quite a little research on the spatial dimension of it. There is more research on ethnic segregation, also in Europe. There's a lot of research about housing segmentation, but very little research on the socio-economic dimension of residential segregation. So we thought that there is an important gap to fill, and especially the fact that the East European cities are especially understudied in this field. I think that the studies from East Europe are less than compared to the research from the Netherlands alone. And we posed three very simple research questions when setting up our study. First, how do the levels of segregation compare in different European regions? We mainly focus between East and West Europe, but not only. Second, what is the temporal dimension? That is, what are the changes over time? We study the two last census rounds, mainly within the book. And finally, what are the kind of factors behind the segregation patterns, and do they somehow correspond also to the levels of social inequalities? The book is about 400 pages long, so I try to summarize as briefly as possible what we found out. So I will not bother you with the literature review. You all know that there are different important factors that have an impact on levels of segregation, starting from globalization, inequalities that tend to increase levels of segregation, but also the cushioning effects of the different welfare arrangements and housing regimes. So if these factors are all important, we made a next small step further, or small exercise, and we tried to somehow measure by attaching values to each of these factors. If the factor is important, then we attached the value of 3 to this city, and if not, if a very small effect could be seen to segregation, we attach the value of 1. So London is the most global city, inequalities are high, also the welfare and housing regimes are very much market-based, so it ended up with a maximum sum of points, or 12. And we repeated the same exercise with all the cities we had in our pool of cities, and we ended up with the following ranking of the cities, with London being expectedly the most segregated cities based on these 4 main factors, and Prague and Vienna ending up in the bottom. It means, based on these factors, we expect that we are the least segregated cities. Of course, it would be naive to expect that everything works in real life as expected, but we saw this exercise as a kind of lesson to learn what are the expected levels of segregation, and if we don't find the expected correspondence with the real life, what can be the important factors, the contextual factors, as Yuri discussed before, that probably might help to understand us better these outcomes. What I present to you today is some very simple graphs that are based on the index of dissimilarity, and I just compare 2 opposite social groups, the bottom and the top bottom group, and what is the spatial distance between these two groups across the European cities. And just for interpretation, we also consider those cities where the value of D is less than 20 as lowly segregated, and those where the value is more than 40 as highly segregated. So what are the main results and main findings from our comparative research? Let us first focus on the blue bars on the graph that show us the spatial distance between the bottom and top group in the year 2000. First of all, we see that all the European cities fall into the medium categories, so there is no city with really high levels of segregation, neither no cities with really low levels of segregation. We also find that there is quite a clear patterning across European regions, with West European cities being most segregated and East Europeans, but also North European cities being in the least segregated part of the graph. So a very clear geographic pattern. And we can say that this pattern from the East European cities more or less still reflects the legacy effects, because residential mobility was still relatively low in the 1990s. If we look at next at the brown bars that show the spatial distance in the year 2011, we see that in all cities, with one exception, there has been a growth in the level of segregation. And the biggest increase could be found in two cities. These are in the two opposite corners of Europe, in Madrid in the south and in Tallinn in the north. And the only exception is Amsterdam, which is still a bit of a puzzle, because the explanations of the segregation patterns in Amsterdam and Vienna with different trends are actually something very, very, very similar. So, if you present a bit some more graphs on the results, then on the vertical axis here we have spatial segregation, again between the bottom and top groups, and on the horizontal axis we have social inequalities. So what we see is that already from the previous graph, it repeats that levels of spatial segregation are lower in East European cities compared to the West European cities. But you also see that on the social inequality axis, they are quite evenly spread across these different levels. So it basically shows us that the social differentiation increased much more rapidly in the 90s compared to the spatial inequalities. And Tallinn was really leading also when it comes to the social inequalities. It became the most socially divided city in the first transition period. But also these results show that there is a tendency that at times of increasing social inequalities, spatial inequalities don't rise or can even decline. And it has been labeled as a paradox of social segregation in East European countries more specifically, but we can actually say that it is a feature that is characteristic of the initial phases of gentrification more generally. When it changes start, the higher social status groups who start to gentrify, they move into the more lower class areas, and this keeps segregation levels low or even decrease segregation levels. And so Tallinn made the biggest change then between the two censuses, and so Tallinn and Madrid are the two most segregated cities. But as you can also see, the level of social inequalities decreased in Tallinn in 10 years between 2000 and 2011, which implies that there is always such kind of delay effect how the social inequalities get translated into the urban space. And yet again we see that still most of the East European cities are a bit less segregated socio-economically compared to the West European cities. To summarize the overall trend, we can see that along the both axes, vertical and horizontal, the arrows point to the upper right direction, which implies that both social and spatial inequalities have been rising in European capital cities. Tallinn being the biggest exception, but being also the most segregated. And the next talk by Kadri will open us a bit more what might be the possible explanations and kind of contextual effects behind these spatial changes in Tallinn. So to conclude, social inequality and segregation are growing across European capital cities. Levels of socio-economic segregation are still lower in East Europe compared to West Europe. The only exception is, the major exception is Tallinn, and we will talk about this city in a moment.
Thank you very much, Tiit.